We're going to go through a revolution. You'd rather undertake it than undergo it.
In the last U.S. presidential election, Andrew Yang, a former CEO, ran on the platform of Universal Basic Income, or UBI, among other things. Yang did not win the election, but his campaign sure brought attention to an economic concept that is being discussed in many countries around the world.
Your signature policy is to give every adult in the United States $1,000 a month, no questions asked. That's right.
The idea of providing every adult citizen in the country with a fixed amount of money every month, no questions asked, seems like a necessary step that will lead the society to a prosperous and utopian stage. But there are others who think that this will lead to more government control, unwillingness to work amongst the population, and a totalitarian communist state. Elon Musk says,
there will be fewer and fewer jobs that a robot cannot do better.
Jordan Peterson,
now we have to start thinking very carefully through how to do the redistribution issue, and we don't know how to do that.
Then Shapiro,
the record of universal basic income has not been particularly successful. They tried it in Ontario. They had to stop it because it was incentivizing people not to work. They tried it in Norway. It was also not particularly effective. They had to stop it.
Ioannis Varoufakis, former finance minister of Greece.
A brilliant idea, especially in view of the failures of the welfare state.
But to find the truth, we need to dig deeper, as a healthy debate and discussion is the only way to reach appropriate conclusions. So, is the UBI the only way forward, or if applied, will it lead society to a dark place? The debate of man versus machine started ever since the advent of technology during the first industrial revolution of the 18th century. The formation of factories and industries rendered many millions jobless who used to work with their hands without using any machines. Since then, we've seen many steady changes in job markets, but in the mid-20th century, with the innovation and widespread usage of computers, the changes in the workforce have been so rapid that many weren't able to keep up. In the present day, we are witnessing the fourth industrial revolution, with artificial intelligence being the driving force in the radical modifications in the labor market. And this time, the revolution is so rapid and advanced that it will not leave any chance for many in the workforce to even try to learn what the machines can do, because the whole reason for the introduction of artificial intelligence in labor-intensive work is to reduce and eliminate the human workers, the time consumed by them, and the chance of human error.
The rise of robots has led to some pretty scary warnings about the future of work.
Robots will be able to do everything better than us.
A recent study found up to 670,000 U.S. jobs were lost to robots between 1990 and 2007, and that number is likely to go up. A widely cited study from 2013 found nearly half of all jobs in the U.S. are in danger of being automated over the next 20 years.
From delivery to truck and cab driving to cashier at checkout counters, these are some of the jobs that are replaced or will be completely replaced by AI in the coming future.
If you look at the backdrop, we automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, and those communities have never recovered. Where if you look at the numbers, half of the workers left the workforce and never worked again, and then half of that group filed for disability. Now, what happened to the manufacturing workers is now going to happen to the truck drivers, retail workers, call centers, fast food workers, and on through the economy as we evolve and technology marginalizes the labor of more and more Americans.
The wheel of technology, once starts to turn, is unstoppable, and the concerns of potentially half the workforce losing their jobs in coming decades are becoming real. These concerns have given momentum to the concept of a universal basic income for all adult citizens of a state. But this is not a new concept. Ever since the first industrial revolution, philosophers, thinkers, and leaders have been concerned about labor rights, and many movements have led to changes in labor laws historically. Many countries, like Saudi Arabia, have programs similar to UBI called the Citizens Account Programs to control growing poverty rates. Even Alaska in the U.S. has a similar plan called Permanent Fund Dividend, which was surprisingly introduced by a Republican governor in this deeply Republican state. Even the people you think would be staunch opponents of the idea of UBI could be seen admitting that it might be an inevitable reality at one point.
I'm not averse to the idea of UBI in a future where legitimately 50% of the population can't work because they've all been automated out of existence and all of this.
But along with the positive changes in labor laws, when the Industrial Revolution changed the workforce, there are precedents in history that scare many from trusting government control of wealth distribution to people without work.
Redistribution is the endgame, but that's a toxic concept for half of the country right now.
Even if we ignore the implication that a UBI program will convert a country like the U.S. into a welfare state, especially on top of all the welfare programs that currently exist, there is a much practical and immediate question. Will UBI lead people to not work at all? After all, if you're getting a check in your account every month, What is then the motivation to find a job at all, especially when you're not qualified to find a high-paying job that requires a high amount of tech know-how? Then there is the argument that historically, whenever a seismic change in the workforce industry occurs, after a lull period, humans catch up with the tech and create multitudes of new avenues that didn't exist before.
What about the argument that the economy seems to be doing pretty well, that every time there's a technological change historically, there's been worker displacement, that there will be people left behind because that's just the nature of creative destruction, but that new jobs will be created in ways that we can't foresee right now? What makes you think that this time is sort of the cataclysm?
But the argument against this is that the technological shift happening this time is designed the way so that humans cannot cope with that. Once artificial intelligence starts the self-correcting and self-learning process, there is no need for a human to supervise it. Plus, the people who didn't or couldn't go to college when they were young, making them learn coding and artificial intelligence technology when they're in their 40s and 50s would be near to impossible. Today, millions of people in the richest countries like the US work in transportation, and with the advent of self-driving trucks, all those jobs would be wiped out within a matter of a few years. How would society rehabilitate so many displaced people?
We're producing a culture that's very cognitively complex. Like, what the hell are you going to do if you can't use a computer? Like, if you can use a computer, you're at least in the game. If you can really use one, you're hyper powerful. If you're not literate enough to use a computer, you're at zero.
The other issue, as previously discussed, is if an individual doesn't have the elementary training to make them useful in the rapidly changing economy, what incentive then they have to work at all if provided a monthly free check from the government? If they can pay for their basic needs through the monthly check, wouldn't this lead to a society with a lack of meaning and dignity in individuals? What would stop society to turn into what Aldous Huxley described in The Brave New World once the UBI starts rolling? Good or bad it may be, but in our current society, individuals derive meaning through their work and profession. When you ask a person who they are, the answer usually consists of their profession. We associate our adult selves with the work we do, and that's what gives individuals the function they hold in society. When the workforce changes and you're getting a monthly check and are left with no desire or ability to learn a new skill or vocation, what would be the identity of the new person? This leads to grave concerns about mass alcohol and drug abuse and purposelessness. If bereft of the purpose we defined for ourselves at a young age, it would be hard to regain that self-respect. Proponents of UBI, like Andrew Yang, present a different picture to this, as he, and many others, see UBI of something like $1,000 a month as a support system, as this amount is not sufficient to pay for all your expenses, but good enough to help you carry your life on without any dignity. A safety net for if you lose your job, you would not be on the streets the next day. Even in the US, it is not a new idea of one of the founding fathers. Thomas Paine was an advocate for it. So was the civil rights leader and even the economist Milton Friedman. The reality of the situation is that the economic divide is on an alarming rise throughout the world. A handful of billionaires are now in control of more than 90% of the world's wealth and economy, and this trend is going to increase when industries like tech become more powerful and in control of the workforce. There are ways in which a commoner can turn their fate around, but when the cost of living is high and one is barely making it to the finishing line as far as monthly expenses are concerned, it gets hard to make the case for the tighten the bootstraps argument. It is true that fiscal programs like UBI can give breathing space to someone hanging by their fingernails, and with a slight increase in the spending power, the money would recirculate in the economy, improving the over-the lifestyle of the citizens. But in reality, countries that have tried something like basic income programs for unemployed people have had mixed responses. The Finland government ran the experiment for only 2 years, while some political parties dropped the idea from their campaigns. There are potential merits and demerits to the idea of providing a basic income to all the adult citizens of a state, but whether it works or not could only be determined with a long-term program and its study. If the program contributes to the overall development of that society, then it's great, but if it goes south and implodes, the results might be irreversible. With the rise of AI and automated jobs, many people have come around the idea of UBI being a viable option for saving people from slipping through the cracks.
I love the idea, and it would be amazing if you won. I mean, it really would be fascinating. And like I said, I've done a complete 180 on the idea of universal basic income.
We're going to go through a revolution. You'd rather undertake it than undergo it.
The reality of the matter is that the change in the workforce is already happening. Small, local stores, mom-and-pop businesses are disappearing, and this situation has only been exacerbated during the pandemic. There have been changes in technology before, none to the scale and magnitude of the takeover of the AI, and the potential of devastation it holds is insurmountable. It would be foolish to think that society can survive this change without any action, but is a basic income plan the solution? Only time will tell.
These are not things that I think that I wish would happen. These are simply things that I think probably will happen. If my assessment is correct and they probably will happen, then we need to say, what are we going to do about it? And I think some kind of a universal basic income is going to be necessary. The output of goods and services will be extremely high. So with automation, there will come abundance.
If you found the video informative, then hit the like button, comment your thoughts down and share to spread the word. Also, a sub to the channel would be motivating. Just wait, we also have over 300 videos to watch. Just click left or right. Keep inspiring.